Hey guys, Vincent here. Before we jump into this video, I want to discuss that we're going to be responding and discussing a topic that was shared on the Pot of Greed, which is by Team APS. I respect these guys. I love their content. I watch it weekly. This is not to say anything bad or disparaging against them, their podcast, or anything like that. So this isn't, it's just merely taking the discussion that they had and adding my own thoughts because I keep noticing this discourse about is Magic the Gathering dead? Is Magic the Gathering dying? For the recent Riftbound that released, I saw people discussing, will this kill Magic the Gathering? And a lot of this discourse is interesting because I keep seeing it pop up, but people aren't discussing the root of it and the root of why this is being discussed. And ultimately, it's because of the brand Magic the Gathering and their target demographic. And Team APS discusses this actually in their video, so I wanted to sort of discuss alongside what they're saying, if you will. And if you want to get to an even deeper root cause, which is not discussed in this video, you can trace it back to stockholders, investors, and this whole, I guess you could almost call it like a scheme where you get so many people on the board of the investors, and you basically, those guys will prioritize short-term profits for short-term gain, and then bleed the company dry, and then move on to a new company. We've been seeing worldwide, or sorry, a lot of closures for like Party City, Joann's, and a lot of companies in the U.S. because they've been bled in this exact way, where these companies will come in, they'll bleed them dry. They'll be like, "Hey, we're here to help. We're here to increase your profits," and they do so in the short term. They bleed it, and then they basically find ways to buy out the land from under them, get the property to rent out the land, and they're getting money from the land that they're renting out. And they're doing all these things that are terrible for the companies in the long term, but so they can make money and then move on. Now, there were laws in place that made this basically impossible to do, but over time, the laws got loosened because of corporate interest, and so now we have this happening. And it's my theory that this is one thing happening to Magic the Gathering, and so we are seeing short-term profits, especially with something like Final Fantasy being crossed over into Magic the Gathering. That is going to be huge for Wizards of the Coast in making money, but I think we're going to see a lot of long-term decay to the player base. But we're going to get more into that when we get into this video. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
So I imagine you guys already know about this, but I'm going to say it for the people who don't know. Magic the Gathering has revealed their new SpongeBob secret lair.
Yeah, this has been all over my timeline for the past just few days, and where do we start with it? I mean, I guess just what are some of the things?
Yeah, where do you start with the SpongeBob secret lair? It is. It used to be a meme that Magic the Gathering would cross over with SpongeBob, but now the meme's a reality, and it used to be used as a meme because it was so ridiculous that people would say, "Okay, I know we're getting The Walking Dead, I know we're getting X, Y, and Z, but like, could you imagine if one day we get SpongeBob?" Crazy. Also, I will be pausing the video to discuss things such as this, not to piss you off, but because it is only fair to Pot of Greed that I do this, and to the folks over at Team APS, because otherwise, if I'm not adding in my discussion, it's just ripping off their content without adding my own perspective to it.
When someone busts out the Gary the Snail as their commander or something.
It's a little off-putting. I think, I mean, I get why they're doing this. I have read.
So on that note, one thing that a lot of people say is, "Hey, if you don't like it, you don't have to play with it." The thing is, though, is whenever you're playing card games, as which was pointed out, if your opponent is playing Gary the Snail as their commander, you do have to, in an essence, play with it because you're interacting with that card. Now, whether you think that's a problem or not, that's up to you to decide. But that is something to consider. I mean, if they are put into the game, and now a lot of these cards are being made standard legal, not the SpongeBob ones, but a lot of the Universes Beyond, half of Magic the Gathering is now Universes Beyond, and they're even uniforming the card templates, so you can't even just make them distinct based off of that. It's something that you have to play with now if you're wanting to play Magic, so that is a factor. And unlike Fortnite, which Magic gets aptly compared to, in Fortnite they sort of uniform the graphics and the designs of the characters, so even if they're taken from all over the place, it has its own sort of unique look to it that is a Fortnite look, and that's what Fortnite has been since it basically launched in popularity. And with Magic the Gathering, it's been something else for decades, and now is sort of taking all these mismatched art styles and different IP from all over the place and trying to put them all together.
That like basically Magic's player engagement rates are the highest they've historically ever been in the last like 2 years. And I think a lot of that is just simply owed to these secret layers and these like universes beyond. At the end of the day, these do get attention. These get people into Magic the Gathering. Like, you know, for a lot of people, like you kind of got into it around Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like I know you kind of knew about Magic, but like that was kind of the set.
No, if it weren't for Lord of the Rings, I would not be playing right now.
Yeah, I know Chris was saying the same thing.
Yeah, and that is a good point. It's valid. If the Lord of the Rings Universes Beyond set never came out, then he would not be playing Magic the Gathering at all. But here's the thing, though. His top game is Yu-Gi-Oh! His second game is Digimon. He dabbles in a lot of games. And so I think we're seeing a pivot for Magic the Gathering where it used to be a lot of people's main game, but as it continues to bleed its original IP for Universes Beyond, we'll see a more widened net, but it'll be sort of more in a casual commander appeal where it's like, oh, well, I'll play for Final Fantasy, I'll play for Spider-Man, I'll play for SpongeBob, but not to play for the Magic IP and have that be your number one game that you play a lot. I know that's how it is for my friend group, and that's what I have been seeing. So I don't think in the long term that is the best strategy, but I digress.
About Assassin's Creed, I know like with Larry, it was kind of like the same. It's just for a lot of people, and even for me, like I know how to play Magic, but I don't actively play it. But like I'll probably be building some sort of a Final Fantasy deck because that's just a series I really like.
Exactly. So Paul will be making a Final Fantasy deck. He'll probably play casually with his friends, but he's not going to be an active Magic the Gathering player the way things used to be. So not only have we seen Wizards of the Coast shift their target demographic, which we'll get into, but they're also shifting in terms of their play model. Instead of it being something where you go in and get the pre-release experience, the drafting experience, playing standard, building your decks, being very hardcore into it, it is more of a casual commander type model. And I even anecdotally, I noticed that the last pre-release I did was years and years ago for like Ixalan or something like that, like in 2018, and we had like 35 to 50 players. I can't remember the exact number, but there's a lot of people packed into the store. Well, now the store has grown twice as big and has been super successful, but their latest pre-release for Ether Drift had like 7 players. And so again, that's anecdotal, but it's not because the card shop's doing worse. I imagine it's because, in part, because of the way things are going with Magic the Gathering. Now, you could argue that the set just looks a lot less fun because Ether Drift kind of looks a little lame. But to see that massive shift of a decline, I think there's something more underneath it. And I would say it's because of the play model that Wizard of the Coast is now prioritizing, which is Commander and getting casual players involved, even at the cost of the hardcore fan base.
So, I get it. Like, I get why these collabs and these crossovers, and God, like Marvel, Spider-Man, that's definitely going to pull people.
But I do wonder, because I mentioned earlier how, or we mentioned that we don't know what the average Magic player looks like.
I really don't.
And I think it's actually a very interesting point. 20 years ago, I'm pretty sure Wizards and everyone who played and were around Magic had a pretty decent idea what the average Magic player looked like. But like you just said,
what is it
the
now?
the player base is higher than it's ever been before. So which means the average has to change, right?
Yeah, it becomes something a lot more nebulous where it's like, where does it go from here? Like, I wonder, how do you take the player who got into Magic from Assassin's Creed and continue to cultivate them? Or like, where does their journey go from there? My assumption is just that like, it's kind of simple. Oh, I got into it from Assassin's Creed and I just kind of wait until the next secret layer that I also like, or the next universe beyond that I also like.
Exactly. So the person who gets involved because of the Assassin's Creed universes beyond, they're not going to. Now, some people will be. Now, when I'm saying this, I'm saying generalizations here. You know, I'm speaking generally. Um, I think generally people that get in from Assassin's Creed will build the Assassin's Creed deck, but they're not going to become a hardcore Magic fan after that. There's not even enough Magic, arguably, to become a hardcore Magic fan anymore when it comes to keeping up with standard releases and being involved, because like to be that, you have to love the Universes Beyond sets that are also coming out. You have to not only be the Assassin's Creed fan that loves the Magic the Gathering lore and the IP, but since that's been reduced so much, you also have to love the Final Fantasy IP coming out, the Spider-Man IP coming out, and the Avatar Last Airbender IP. And even if you love all those IP, you have to love the 3 new ones they release next year, which could be anything. It could be Game of Thrones and Star Wars and whatever. And you're not going to be in love with all those IP on a consistent basis. So it's going to be a lot more kind of casually drop in and drop out. And as they were pointing out earlier, the ideal demographic that they had 20 years ago has to change now. And it is something that they've actively talked about being different. They've talked about making their game for modern audiences now. So when back then it would be just kind of your standard guy that would be maybe in his 20s or 30s, and it'd be a guy that doesn't he just wants to play a card game. You know, he just wants to enjoy a game, have a good time, play, and you know, probably has an average income and just plays the game. Well, now, you know, it is getting to the point to where it's a little bit of everything, touching upon a lot of different generations, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that in particular. But when you change, when you shift your demographic, you are going to get people, especially when you built that demographic for decades, that are going to feel a bit alienated, a bit disrespected, maybe even a bit betrayed when it shifts so far from one side to another. And so that's part what we're seeing with Magic the Gathering here, but obviously they want to keep that base as well. So, you know, they're trying to sort of have their cake and eat it too, so to speak.
And that's probably fine. I mean, I guess like once you get them at a commander table, they'll just the rest is kind of history sort of deal.
Though but I wonder the demographics around what it means to be an average Magic player. Because the closer you were to the average 20 years ago, probably the more alienated you might feel now.
It actually brings me a lot back to that whole, old man yells at cloud sort of deal where, oh my god, they're probably going to do a Simpsons collab.
Why not?
If they did SpongeBob, they'll do Simpsons. But anyway.
Futurama.
Or that. Yeah. But what I was going to say is, like, at what point are the people who are angry about these secret layers and, like, angry about these universes beyond things and just the purity of magic is being destroyed, at what point are you actually just kind of not the majority? Like, sure, you feel like, well, I've been playing for, like, 20 plus years or whatever, but I can kind of like reflect that back on you, the same question back on you. You've been playing for 20 plus years, so really how in touch with it are you, like, in a sense?
I think to some degree Magic has evolved past what it once was. You know, all companies have a picture of what they believe their target audience looks like, smells like, thinks like. They have a profile of what they think their target audience is. And if I were a betting man, I would bet that for Wizards right now, that picture has changed substantially.
It really probably has.
I think that picture.
Exactly. That picture is very different now. Businesses get a lot of insight on their customers, and they can make a very conscious choice on which type of customer they want to target. And they made it very clear that what they're targeting currently is different than what it has been in the past. So when you have that, you're going to have people be upset if they were the people being targeted to get all these products essentially made for them, and then have it pivot. And the more it pivots away from them, the more it feels like they're being left behind. And so that's just a natural reason why people might feel like Magic the Gathering is dead or dying. It's weird because it is a combination between the branding aspect and them changing their audience, as well as being bled from the inside out due to investors. It's sort of like this weird marriage between the two, this unholy marriage. But that's my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the discussion, in the comments below. Let's discuss it. That's what these videos are all about at the end of the day. It's just opening up conversation, dialogue, talking about this, seeing your insights, and perhaps thinking and seeing things in a new perspective. Of course, give Team APS a look at. Check out Pot of Greed. I'll drop a link for them in the description below. Like I said, I do like these guys. I like what they make, their content. It's pretty good. So be sure to check that out. And thank you so much for watching the video. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps us out over here at Vindicated. And we'll catch you next time. Stay awesome. Hey, what is up? If you are a fan of anime and tabletop games, then be sure to check out our card games, tabletop role-playing games, and even our manga. We have a lot of fun stuff over there for you to check out on our website, VindicateEntertainment.com. We even have a brand new tabletop role-playing game, Black Paper Moon. Check it out, and we'll see you there.